Early on in my career, I had probably my most embarrassing lesson, which was don't try to sugarcoat bad news. It happened the first time I was put in a position I had to fire someone. And I think like all people, the first time you have to fire someone, in fact, anytime you have to fire someone, you're basically uncomfortable. It's not pleasant news, it's a difficult situation. And so you try to figure out, well, what's the easiest way to get this story out without appearing to be a bad guy. I sort of gathered my thoughts about me, and I went down to the HR department and I said, I'm going to be firing George this afternoon, and you might expect to see his face at your door because I'll send him down to figure out what are his options with regard to termination payments and how is he going to handle his 401k program and so on and so forth. And so I felt I was pretty well prepared. And I called George in that afternoon and I said, George, things just aren't working out. We've got some problems here, and I explained why he wasn't contributing to the organization. And I said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're just going to have to look for another job. And I said, I think probably the next step is for you to go down and talk to the folks in personnel, and then you can figure out where your options are from there. And I thought, well, that wasn't too bad. George didn't seem particularly upset. He was concerned, sorry it wasn't working out, but he certainly didn't seem as upset as I would have been if somebody had just fired me. And so the next morning I came in, and so did George. And George was sitting there at the desk, just as if nothing had happened. And so I went over and I said, George, why are you here? And he said, well, I'm here working on this project. And I said, well, didn't you understand our discussion yesterday? And he said, well, yes, I did. He said, I understand that I'm not working out in this position, and that I should go down to personnel and talk about what other options there are within the company for me to find another job someplace in the company. And I thought about it and I said, well, that's probably not an unfair interpretation of what I said, because I wasn't that straightforward. I didn't say, you need to find another job outside this company, you're fired. And his state of mind was such that he didn't want to hear that. And so I've ultimately had to replay the conversation to him, explain to him that he indeed was fired, take him down to personnel, and complete the task, which was much more unpleasant at that point in time to have had two conversations instead of getting it out in the first conversation. But what it told me and what it taught me, and I learned more and more higher up I got in the organization, is that if you think you're doing people favors by sugarcoating news, or if you think you're making your life easier by being somewhat oblique in the way you deliver bad news, you're kidding yourself. And in fact, there's no substitute for just straightforward, between the eyes truth.